Man, I need to find another game to play. Why don't I replay Final Fantasy VII? Another new one just came out. Hey there, this is RP Overdrive, and on today's episode of Why This Matters, we're going to be talking about a 90s classic, an absolute staple of the video game genres and franchises, Final Fantasy VII, and its relevance on modern gaming. Take a seat, enjoy your Moogle popcorn, and let's get into this retro classic of a video game that's remodernized into something that's reasonably good. For those who may not be aware, Why This Matters is a series of videos that goes over retro games and looks at them through a more modern perspective, especially with how gaming culture has been changing over the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And on this episode, Final Fantasy VII is a staple of video games. Final Fantasy VII is one of those games that either you know it or you don't. If you know it, you most likely it's on most players, most people's top 10, top 5 favorite games list of all times, or you've heard of the franchise, you're aware of the game itself. It's very rare for a video game franchise such as that to exist, and Final Fantasy's gone through the trek of time back from where it was initially a franchise that was the final straw of a company before they went bankrupt, and it blew up into something amazing. So now we're pushing, FF18 or 16 now? I don't know. I don't have time to play them all. But on today's episode, we're going to be talking about one that's about in the middle, Final Fantasy VII. So recently, Final Fantasy VII just had their Rebirth game come out a few weeks ago, and plays right after the events of Midgar, where Cloud and his friends are traveling to stop Sephiroth and idealistically go against fate. And at time of making this video, I have not played it yet. What made Final Fantasy VII incredibly important for most people's development into gaming is infused with a couple of factors, and one of the biggest factors is its cultural impact. Final Fantasy VII played a huge role in popularizing Japanese-style role-playing games to Western audiences, where an environment such at that time didn't really exist. Western audiences were more prone to the action, side-scrolling, kind of run-around, real quick gameplay action games, and story-driven narratives didn't really exist at the time. I mean, you could argue that you had more complex games with stories, but they were more PC-driven, such as Fallout franchise, Diablo, if you want to consider that, which still had a bunch of clicking and action in it, but nothing that really serialized turn-based combat. Its success helped establish the Final Fantasy franchise as one of the most influential franchises in video game history. Up until FF7, it was kind of a blip on a radar. Mega Man had more popularity, or Resident Evil had more popularity. At the time, FF7 interviews saying, yo, story-based JRPGs have a home here in the US. With the storytelling aspect, it infused a complex and immersive storyline that pulled players into the depths with emotional responses. It's not often that a video game explores death, especially of a main character, a character that you've had the ability to play actually as, and to have them removed from your team for the remainder of the game. I remember back in the 90s that there were rumors that you could revive Aerith with special codes and on the PlayStation 1, which to my understanding didn't exist. There are mods now where you can do that, so good for mods. But at the time, experiencing loss in a video game was a heavy topic, spliced in with the environmentalism of AVALANCHE trying to save the world against an evil corporation stealing away resources from the rest of the world. At the time, these were just really unusual topics to explore for most younger audiences. My 13-year-old brain was blown when I came to the conclusion that, maybe large corporations aren't the most amazing thing in the world. And nowadays, this game, if we look at it from face value, if you were to plug in Final Fantasy VII, or really any of the Final Fantasies into the older consoles, they look like blocky messes. They have a certain charm about them, and yes, the combat, if you get to a combat screen, the animations look more fluid, more fleshed out, but you can't, you have to kind of appreciate the polygon blocks of Cloud and his friends as they run around looking like Roblox characters from the 90s. But that's where the remakes come in and really spice up the initial stories of these games, but giving them not just a coat of paint, but an entire overhaul. That's where these remakes shine, where they can take the things about the game that haven't aged well, take the graphics as a prime example, and fix it. You don't have to change the story to do so. The story is fantastic, and it's actually one of the key aspects why people play the game, but just tune up the things that don't resonate well anymore. However, unlike the remakes, the factor about why players go back to replaying the original games is not only relive the original experience, but the soundtrack for this game is so iconic that it's had itself not only remade over and over, and in the remake the songs have been remade and remastered over and over again, but the iconic soundtrack composed by, if I say this incorrectly, I apologize, Nobuyo Itsumatsu is widely regarded as one of the best video game soundtracks of all time. The music added depth and emotion to the game's narrative and has since been synonymous with the Final Fantasy franchise. If you hear the opening fanfare for this game, or just in general, the classic piano solo that trails off into the main course of one of these games, you know that that they are going to be entering in a unique, original narrative, in-depth story, and unique world that makes Final Fantasy what it is, a amazing story narrative. In a sense, these video games, these Final Fantasy video games, is nothing but a 40-plus hour movie that you get to interact with. Thing about going to the movie theater, just imagine going to the movie theater and every time you take a seat you get a controller and you said, okay, you're going to stay here for 40 hours, now make the movie do what you want to do. Overall, Final Fantasy VII combined at the time what were groundbreaking graphics, compelling storytelling, memorable characters, and innovative gameplay to create a gaming experience that resonated with players for well over 30 years. And that won't change. The fact that we are still getting new, fresh, original content, remasters, remakes of this game, because people not only will buy it, but it's so beloved. It reflects a undying bound love for this game and how this game culturally has impacted the lives of so many people in a positive way, whether it being just being able to listen to the soundtrack and feel the emotions through a video game, or having the opportunity to cosplay as your favorite character, because who doesn't like a totally ridiculously near silent protagonist to be the badass to build emotions towards his group of misfits and allies as friends. All of these combined created this unique, beautiful experience that is Final Fantasy VII. And I think the world is generally, but at least I think video games as a whole, they're more enriched and involved because of the time and energy that went into making this game. Because of Final Fantasy, games are better. Games are way more than what they could have been. But that's my opinion. What's yours? And that's why Final Fantasy VII matters. What's your thoughts on this? If you think I'm wrong, or you think there's something, if you think there's a better game that should matter more than this, maybe FF8, let me know in the comments below, and I would really appreciate a subscribe if you want to help me out grow this channel. But I appreciate you, thanks for watching, and see you in the next video. Cheers.